Yo, what is up, buddy gamers out there? The name is Tekken Heat, and I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas. I sure did. Well, kind of. My Christmas was actually kind of interesting because for the holidays, I decided to spend some time with my family. I decided to go from where I was with my mom and drive all the way to my dad's. They're about 45 minutes away. And along this way, I decided to take my usual back road area. Now, just to give you guys a quick little background, on the back road, as you can imagine, it's pretty empty. It's currently going through a bit of construction, trying to expand from a single lane both ways to double. And for the double lanes, the speed limit is 55, and for the single, the speed limit is 45. Now, keep in mind, this is an empty road for the most part, so you're not going to be going by any cars that often. Well, as I was driving along this road, I kind of forgot what the speed limit was because being a very open road area, you don't have anybody to like compare your speed with. You're kind of just cruising on by. So I was going at a somewhat high rated speed. I was going like in the 60s, and unfortunately I forgot that the area that I was in was actually a 45 speed limit area. And while I was driving, unfortunately, a cop came. Well, a cop was actually coming on the opposite way. He caught me on the radar. He found out that I was speeding, and he made a UE, and he pulled me over and gave me a ticket. Now, thankfully, the cop was nice enough to lower the speed down a little bit, so the ticket shows I wasn't going as fast, so the ticket pricing isn't as expensive. I guess he was in the holiday spirit, and I was being respectful, which you should always be. So even though my ticket isn't as bad as it should have been, it's still a ticket. And this is where I want to start my little ranting discussion. As I mentioned, the speed limit was 45, and this was a back road area where the road's pretty much empty for the most part. You're not going to be putting, any harm to anybody. It's pretty much your own cruising area, but yet the speed limit is 45. Only other area where the speed limit is that is in the city, and that's where things are more populated and stuff. You have other areas like one of the roads that I hit on just before going on the back road. It's 65, and 65 is normally our highway speed. Yet that road can still be a little bit more populated, not as much because it's still on the outskirts of the city, but that road is still a little bit more populated than the back road, and yet that's a lot higher speed than the back road. And what I want to pretty much discuss is the speed limit laws and how useless and how unfair they pretty much are. Now, to me, to be honest, I've always had this thought, and not just ever since I started driving or since I got this ticket, but long before I started driving, that the speed limits, at least down here in South Florida, are pretty low and pretty unreasonable. Like I said, the cities is 45. You have certain areas that are less populated that are 55, and highways and turnpikes are like 65, 70. And when I say populated, it's not that bad. I don't mean like New York populated. The traffic isn't that bad unless obviously it's rush hour. And to be honest, it's so easy to go over speed limits. It's honestly, it's kind of the norm, to the point where you'll even notice cops going over speed limits without having, their sirens on or anything. They're just cruising over speed limits. Everybody is. I say, like, on average, people go between like 5 to even 15 over the speed limit. So people are constantly breaking the rules, cops included, and yet you don't really notice anything wrong because everyone's still going at a safe, comfortable pace. And one of the key things that I have a problem with speed limits is it's a limit. It's meant to be a limit, saying that this is as fast as we're allowing you to go before breaking the laws. They're saying that 45 is, that's how fast people should be driving. Any further, and you're now in that gray area breaking the law and such. Every now and then, some people have this kind of notion that if you go like 5-ish over, you're still okay. But in the end, you're still technically breaking the law. But the reason why everyone says, like, 5-10-ish over, you're okay, is because in the end, you're still safe. You're still driving safely. And that's why I get irritated with speed limits, is because they're not really a good representation of how things should be on the road. In my honest opinion, speed limits, at least nowadays, should be raised to probably 15 over, to probably like 15. I probably want to say 20, because then that's a little bit too ridiculous, at least in certain areas like the city. But like, speed limit should be raised to like 10, 15 over, and then things are a lot more reasonable. Like, a lot of people, I'm pretty sure, can safely drive at 60 miles an hour in the city streets without putting anybody in harm's way. And even if the person themselves may not feel comfortable doing that, it's not a requirement. Keep in mind, the speed limit is the max speed they're allowing you to go until you start reaching that, breaking the law limit. And 60 seems like a pretty good max for city roads. For highways, like I said, it's like 65, 70. That would be like 80, 85 if it was raised like 15 over. That sounds pretty reasonable on the highway. Any higher, it's like you can still control it, but then it's kind of like, is it really necessary? Is the thing. Is it necessary to go even higher? Nowadays, it's so perfectly fine to go over 45 or 65 on the highway. But if you want to like raise it, then raise it to a point where it's like, it's still good, it's still controllable. And now if you go like any higher, it's starting to be like, now you're really pushing it. Now you kind of are risking and deserving of getting a ticket, because going like 65, 70 on the city streets, now you're kind of putting people at risk. But going like 55, 60, because of manufacturers and engineers being so great at making cars so safe and so great at like being smooth and controlling at speeds. And speaking of speeds, how I mentioned 45 miles per hour being the speed limit, so many cars are capable of reaching that within a few seconds. I would probably say average like 4 to 6 seconds, because a lot of cars, they're kind of like put out to, have their 0 to 60 times trying to be as quick as can be. My car, which is a 2006 Mitsubishi Lancer Rally Art, can hit 0 to 60 within 7 seconds, which means it can hit 0 to 45, which is the city speed limit, within much faster of a time. And I'm supposed to just hit that speed and maintain that speed for like the entire time I'm there. And that can be very, very frustrating because now it's starting to feel like, you're holding everybody back and yourself included. And it's really, really frustrating because has anybody, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have just like gone on the streets and are being blocked by all lanes of drivers who are going at the same rated speed, whether it be like 45, maybe 50, whatever the speed is. It's pretty frustrating when that's a thing. If speed limits were raised like 60, it may still be frustrating just being, completely blocked on all lanes. But I feel like at that point, everybody would start respecting the fast lane, left lane rule where, if you want to go at a higher speed, you take the left lane, and those who might be holding that left lane back will just go on to the right lane and allow that traffic to keep on flowing. Luckily, that's respected on highways, but that's kind of because a lot of people are capable of actually going a lot faster and such, so a lot of people are more aware of what they're doing. But on city streets, a lot of people just ignore that, and that's really frustrating. And I think that's just because a lot of people have that mindset of the speed limit's 45. Why are you trying to go faster? Because it's possible and you can still be in control. Cars are capable of handling so well and so smoothly that 45 feels like nothing. You feel like a turtle going at 45. Even at 40, even at 60, you still feel very well in control. And even though I say that should be the speed limit, to be honest, you can go even faster and still feel in control. That's why highways are still at higher speeds, because you can drive very fast on there and still feel, safe. But to me, speed limits should be raised, but there should always be a limit. I just feel like the speed limits we have now just are too held back. Like, speed limits are just holding everybody back now from modern days. I feel like the speed limits that we have now, they used to be good like 20 or so years ago when cars weren't as safe as they are now. But nowadays, I feel like the government should, look to changing it up a little, because like I said, cars are getting faster, cars are handling better, cars are getting safer. There's so many safety features that are constantly being put out into cars that even if the driver is screwing up, the car is there to help out. The car is there to stay focused and keep track of what's going on. How we have these features of, if you get too close to the person in front, the car will stop and prevent accidents. So cars are really, really getting more and more advanced, to the point where it's like, I think we're okay now to put the speed limit up more because of how safe everything is getting. And speaking of that, I was watching Evan Shanks' video, which I'll definitely leave his video in the description down below, because I feel like he gets a lot of points out more better than how I am, because this is more of a ramble. His is more of a well-educated discussion. But he was talking about how at speeds, the slower you go, the more vulnerable you are to being distracted, the more vulnerable you are to looking at your phone, to doing your makeup if you're a girl or a guy, because I don't judge. The more prone you are to looking around, probably eating your McDonald's if you got fast food and you're starving. You're more prone to doing all that stuff. But the higher you go, the faster you go, the more you are focused on the road, the more you want to, get rid of all that distraction and just stay focused and make sure that you're doing what you're meant to be doing. And I thought about that and I noticed that that's very true. A lot of times, and this is kind of hurting my discussion, but a lot of times you'll see drivers who are trying to go as fast as they can. They'll try to go like 70 or 80, which even when I want to bump up the speed limit, that's still illegal. Like, you should be ticketed for that. But people are going like that fast, swerving around traffic and stuff. But if you look carefully, they're doing it with such precision and such focus that in their eyes, they feel comfortable, they feel safe, they know what they're doing because of how focused they are into the road, to the point where sometimes accidents can be caused by the opposite person because they're too distracted. And I know that's a little controversial. Some people might think otherwise. Some people might think like, no, they're just being reckless, which they kind of are. But at the same time, I feel like if you look at both of them, the speeder is very, very focused on what he's doing. He's trying to be as precise as can be. Whereas somebody going at a much slower speed might be looking down at their phone or probably singing to their tunes, just like not being as focused on the road. And then seeing the driver coming up and stuff, well, in their eyes, they might not be seeing it. They might swerve into them and such. This happened to me numerous times. Not even going at like high speeds, but like I'm just driving along the road and people just want to like merge into the lane that I'm on right next to me. Like, whether it be I'm just in their blind spot or I'm like side by side, but they just think like, oh, I'm gonna just change lanes, but not even like pay attention, which makes no sense whatsoever. I think nowadays speed isn't the dangerous factor anymore. It's just people not paying attention. That's why nowadays we're starting to have laws that's like preventing people from like going on their phones and such, because speed is kind of being irrelevant because of how safe things are. And for those going fast, they're being as focused as they can be. But now it's like the slower you're going, the more prone you are to being distracted. And you might be like, man, whatever, everything's all about me. I can do whatever I want and everything will go well. I don't know. The moral of this rant is just that speed limits nowadays are kind of useless and kind of very restrictive, and honestly are very outdated. I think that's like the key thing. The speed limits nowadays are very outdated to where it's about time it needs an update. I say, and we can have this discussion in the comments down below, speed limits nowadays should be all increased. At least those that are more car populated, areas that are more car populated, and I mean something like driving along cities or highways and such, not like residential areas or stuff like that. But cars are more like car oriented areas, they should be increased by like 15 or so percent. I mean, not percent, but 15 miles per hour. Why? Because cars and stuff are now being made safer to where going at like 60 or so is controllable, it's maintainable, you can do it with ease, and it's not made as a requirement. Just because the speed limit says 60 doesn't mean you're supposed to go 60. It just means that's as far as we're letting you go before you start reaching that illegal speed, I guess you can say. So if you still want to go 45 or 55, you can do it. It's just now those who are still in control at going 60, they're just now allowed to do it as well, and they're still in control. And if you want, obey the left-hand law, where those that want to go faster go on the left lane, those that want to go slower go on the right lane. It's as simple as that. I just think the traffic laws need to be updated more. Please let me know how you guys feel in the comments down below. I think this would be a fun little discussion if you want. And yeah, till next time, this has been your boy taking heat, and I'm out. Peace.